Welcome back. We will be on lesson 6 today, problem set 6, if you want to find that in your workbooks. Hope you're doing okay at home. Hang in there. Hopefully it won't be much longer. Please let us know again if you're having any problems. Okay, in lesson 6, we are going to be comparing numbers. So again, this is a concept that you've heard before in 4th grade. Two things that I want to talk about before we jump in are these symbols, because a lot of students kind of have some confusion about these. So just to make sure, this is the greater than sign. Okay, so I'm going to label that so you have it. This sign means greater than. Okay, this is the less than sign. And of course, this is equals. Now, a lot of kids like to think about the alligator mouth. You know, the mouth is eating the bigger number. That is perfectly fine to think through in your mind. However, I want you to be able to say the symbols correctly. We read in our English language from left to right. So if you have a statement and you have some number like 10 is greater than 7. Notice I read from left to right. 10 is greater than 7. This is the greater than sign. It is always the greater than sign because we read from left to right. If I rearrange these numbers and put the 7 first, 7 is less than 10. This is the less than sign. Okay. Also, something to help you remember, the less than sign does kind of look like an L. Okay, it's in the direction of an L, so that kind of can help you remember that the less than sign is tilted kind of like an L is. Okay, all that being said, we can jump in now that we have those symbols down. In number 1, it says show the numbers on the place value chart using digits. Use greater than, less than, or equal to compare. Explain your thinking in the space to the right. Okay, so what they want us to do is put these two numbers on a place value chart, and you'll see why in a second. So I'm going to put 34 and 223 thousandths. That's my first number. My second number is 34 and 232 thousandths. Okay, so as I'm comparing, this is one way to compare numbers. As you start on the leftmost side and say, okay, they both have a 3 in the tens, they both have a 4 in the ones, they both have a 2 in the tenths, so I can't compare my numbers till I get here and the digits are different. And I say, okay, this number has a 2 in the hundredths and this one has a 3. So this number is less than this one because 2 is less than 3. Okay, so again, if I'm looking at this is my compare spot right here, the hundredths place. 2 is less than 3, so I use the less than sign. Okay, and since I'm saying this out loud, I'm not going to write an explanation to the right for sake of time. Okay, but I am going to show where I'm comparing. Okay, now look at the next one. This one is 8 tenths is my first number. And my second number is 706 thousandths. Now, there are a lot of students who would say the 706 thousandths, that the 8 tenths is less than 706 thousandths because 8 is less than 706. Okay, but there is an error in that thinking. If you follow what I just showed you in the first example, notice they both have a 0 in the ones place, and if I compare right here, the numbers are different. 8 is larger than 7, okay? So 8 tenths is actually greater than 706 thousandths. But that might be confusing to you, but think about this for just a second. 8 tenths is the same thing as 800 thousandths. I can always tack on zeros at the end of a decimal number and the value is still the same. 8 tenths is the same as 800 thousandths. So now you can compare and say, oh, 800 is larger than 706. So if that helps you, there's two strategies. You can either go down the line and find the place to compare, okay? Or you got to make sure that your numbers have the same number of place value units, okay? And then compare. So if you need to fill in with zeros so they have the same number of digits and then compare, do that, okay? And you'll see what I mean as we do some more examples. Okay, let's move to number 2. We are just going to compare a whole bunch of numbers, but you're going to see that sometimes they're written in different ways. So you need to think about them in the same way before you can compare. Now the first one, they're both written as a decimal, so that makes it easier. They both have 16 as a whole number, so you just move to the tenths place, okay? This one has 3/10 and this one has 4/10, so 3 is less than 4. Okay, the next one, now look, this one's written as a decimal, this one's written as a fraction. So we need to have kind of some common terms here. I could just read the numbers. I would say this as 83/100ths. I would read this as 83/100ths. So they are the same thing. So they're equal. Okay, again, fraction, decimal. But if I read them, it makes it apparent because they both are thousandths. 205 thousandths, 205 thousandths. They are the same. They're equal. Okay, look at this one. They're both a decimal. Okay, so let's apply some strategies we've learned. Notice they both have a 9 in the tens and a 5 in the ones, a 5 in the tenths, and an 8 in the hundredths. They're the same so far. Now this one has a 0 in the thousandths. This one has nothing sitting here. However, you can always put a 0 on the end. So these are also equal. Same number. Okay, next one. They both have a 9 in the ones place. So I move down to the tenths place. This one has a 1. This one has a 0. Okay, 1 is greater than 0. Okay, but again, a lot of kids say, but 99 is bigger than 1. However, this is 99 thousandths. If I fill into the thousandths place over here, now compare 100 thousandths, 99 thousandths. 100 is greater than 99. Okay, next one. This one is written as a decimal. This one is given in unit form. Okay, so let's think about unit form for a second. If I have a number and it's said to be 83/10ths, and I want to write that as a decimal, that means I have to take these digits and I have to place the decimal so the number has tenths. Okay, so if I write my numbers and say I have to put the decimal in so the number has tenths, remember tenths, oh, I lost my place value chart. Remember that tenths is right here. That means I have to have one digit after the decimal point. So if I insert a decimal with one digit after the decimal point, the decimal would go right here. Okay, that's 83/10ths. That's how I would write it. And notice, they're equal. Okay, same thing here. If this says 58/100ths, okay, I write 58, but I have to put the decimal so the number has hundredths. Well, remember hundredths, there's 2 digits after the decimal point. So I put the decimal here, tenths, hundredths. That's 58/100ths. Okay, well, let's come over and compare. 5 is a whole number, 5 8/10ths. So notice here, the whole number is 5. Here, the whole number is 0. 5 is greater than 0. Okay, hopefully you're so far so good. Let's go to the next page. And at any time, please pause the video and try a few on your own and then play it and see if you got them right. Okay, we'll keep going. 36 and 9 thousandths. This is what we practiced yesterday. That and, remember, is a decimal point. So 36 and 9 thousandths. Remember, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. The 9 would go in the thousandths place, so I have to put some zeros here. Okay, now let's compare over here. 4 tens. Okay, Remember, the tens place is like that, the tens, ones, tens. 4 tens is 40. Okay, so 40 as a whole number. My whole number here is 36. So 36 is less than 40. Notice I always read this number first. I read from left to right. 36 is less than 40. Okay, 202 hundredths. Okay, so if I write down my digits, and then I have to put the decimal point, so this number has hundredths. Remember, hundredths, there are 2 places after the decimal point in hundredths. Okay, so I should have a decimal point and 2 digits. So if I'm going to put my decimal point in the right place, it should go right here. Decimal point and 2 digits. Okay, that's 202 hundredths. Now let's come over here. 2 hundreds. Okay, so 2 hundreds. That would mean like the hundreds place is here. 2 hundreds and 2 thousandths. Okay, 2 thousandths, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. 2 thousandths is down here. Okay, so 2 hundreds and 2 thousandths. My number would look like that. Now let's compare. The whole number here is 2. The whole number here is 200. So 2 is less than 200. Okay, moving on. 158 thousandths. Okay, so thousandths, remember, decimal point, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. 158 thousandths. My number would look like that. Come over here. 158,000. Well, that is way bigger than this one, okay? So this number is less than this number. Okay, last one here in the chart. This one is written as a decimal, so let's look at this unit form a second. 415 tenths. Remember, when they tell us tenths, that means I have to insert my decimal point so this number has tenths in it, which means 1 digit after the decimal point. So I would have to put it right here. Okay, so now let's compare. The whole number here is 4. The whole number here is 41. So 4 is less than 41. Okay, great. Hopefully you're following along, okay? The next thing we're supposed to do is take these 4 numbers and arrange them in increasing order. Okay, so that means I'm going to start with the smallest and they're going to increase to the biggest. So let's see how we're going to pick the smallest number. Well, let's just first start and comparing. Notice that they all have a 3 in the ones place. I'm just going to cross them off there. Okay, they all have a 3. So I'm not going to compare right there. Okay, look at the next, the tenths place. 0, 0, 0, 0. They all have a 0. So I'm not comparing there. Let's look at the hundredths place. A 4, a 5, a 5, and a 4. Okay, so these 2 are the smaller numbers because they have a 4 in the hundredths place. So we have to pick which one is the smallest. Well, so I take these 2 and I move down the line 1 more place. Well, this one has a 9 and this one doesn't have anything there, so I could put a 0, okay? A 0 is less than 9, so this number is the smallest. So this is the one I will write first. 3 and 4 hundredths. That's my first number, smallest. Okay, so I used that one. And then this is my next smallest number. 3 and 49 thousandths. Okay, so those are the 2 smallest. Now I look at these 2. Okay, they both have a 5. Okay, so I have to move down the line 1 more spot. This one has a 9. This one has nothing, a 0. So this one is smaller than this one, so I would write it next. 3 and 5 hundredths. Okay, and then this one would be the biggest. Now notice, if I had put zeros on all of those and looked at them and just looked at the hundredths and thousandths place, this would be 40, 49, 50, 59. So that might help you put them in order. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, again, we're looking for the smallest one first. And glancing down the line, they all have 182 as a whole number. Okay, so let's start with the 10th place. This one has a 2. This one has a 0. This one has a 1. This one has a 0. Okay, so let's really look at the ones with the 0 because they're smaller. Okay, so if I compare these, let's move down the line one more spot to the hundreds. This has a 5. This has a 2. 2 is smaller. Okay, so I write this one first. 182 and 25 thousandths. Okay, so we use this one. This one's my next smallest. 182 and 5 hundredths. Okay, so I've used that one. Now let's keep going. The next one, the 10th place, this one has a 1. This one has a 2. So this one goes next. 182 and 105 thousandths. And then finally 182 and 205 thousandths. Okay. We'll move on, but notice my procedure is the same every time. The directions here are a little different. Now it says arrange the numbers in decreasing order. Okay, so that means they're going down. So I'm starting with the biggest and moving down to the smallest. So now I'm looking for my biggest number. So notice they all have a 7 as a whole number. So let's move to the 10th place. I see a 6, a 6, a 6, and a 0. Okay, well I know that's the smallest, but I'm looking to start with the biggest number. Okay, so let's look at these 6s. Okay, and I have to move to the next place to compare. This one has a 0. This one has an 8. This one has a 0. Okay, so the biggest number right here would be the one with the 8 in the hundredths place. That's my biggest. 7 and 68 hundredths. Okay, so I've used that one. Now I'm looking at these two for the next biggest. Well, they both have a 0 in the hundredths, so I have to move down the line one more spot. This one has an 8. This one has nothing. Okay, so this one is the next biggest. 7 and 608 thousandths. So I've used this one. I know this one comes next. And then this one is finally my smallest. All right, very good. Let's move to our last one here on the page. Again, I'm starting with the biggest number. Okay, they all have 439 as a whole number. Okay, so let's move to the 10th place. I have a 2. I have a 1. I have a 6 and a 2. Okay, so if I'm looking for the biggest number, it's the one with the 6 in the 10th place. So 439 and 612 thousandths. Okay, use that one. Okay, then I look for my next biggest number. Well, these both have a 2. Okay, so let's look at those. I have to move down the line one to compare again. Okay, this one has a 1. This one has a 6. So 6 is greater than. So this one comes next. 439 and 261 thousandths. Okay, then this one would come third. 439 and 216 thousandths. And then this is my smallest number. 439 and 126 thousandths. Okay, great. All right, I gotta hurry. I'm already at 19 minutes. Okay, last two problems. This one says Lance measured 485 liters of water. 485 thousandths liters of water. Angel measured 5/10 liters of water. Lance said, my beaker has more water than yours because my number has 3 decimal places and yours only has 1. Is Lance correct? Use words and numbers to explain your answer. Okay, if you need to pause and think about it, you can do that before you come back. You decide, is he right? He is not right. His does not have more. Okay, if you're going to compare these two, 5/10 of a liter, so let's say no. Let's see, is Lance correct? No, because Angel's 5/10 of a liter is equal to 5/1000 of a liter. They're the same, or 500,000ths, okay? Which is greater than Lance's 485,000ths of a liter. Okay, so he was incorrect. Hopefully that was an easy one. Last one. This one's a little tricky, but I'm going to do some tape diagrams to kind of show you what's going on in this one. It says Dr. Hong prescribed 19 thousandths liters more medicine than Dr. Tannenbaum. Okay, so I'm going to draw, and then we have another doctor too. So we're going to just draw some tape diagrams so you can see. So if Dr. Hong prescribed more medicine than Dr. Tannenbaum, that means his bar would be longer if I'm doing tape diagrams. So if I called this Dr. T for Dr. Tannenbaum, okay, Dr. Hong prescribed more. Okay, so I'm going to make the bar a little longer. And how much longer is his bar? 19 hundredths of a liter more. Okay, so Dr. Hong prescribed 19 thousandths liters more medicine than Dr. Tannenbaum. Okay, Dr. Evans prescribed 2 hundredths less than Dr. Hong. Well, remember that 2 hundredths is actually 20 thousandths. Okay, so if Dr. Evans is 20 thousandths less than Dr. Hong, and I'm comparing it with this, and it's 20 thousandths less, that means this is 19 thousandths, so 20 thousandths would be like in here. It's a little bit less. So this tape would be shorter than this one, okay? Because if you started with Dr. Hong, 19 thousandths would go here, 20 thousandths would be a little bit less. Okay, so it means this tape is shorter than this tape. And this is Dr. Evans. Okay, so just using tape comparisons really helps. So that means if it said who prescribed the most and who prescribed the least, it's easier to see this, that Dr. Hong had the most. His tape is the longest. And who had the shortest tape? Dr. Evans had the least. Okay, maybe a little bit confusing, but tapes are an easy way to compare. Okay, I'm going to end because this is 23 minutes. Hopefully you're good on comparing numbers. Now turn to your lesson 6 homework and give it a try. Have a good day.